Well, hey, we're back to Timothy today. We've only got 2 weeks left in Timothy, this week and next week. And next week I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do a real short-term thing for about 4 weeks after that, which I think is going to be real fun, but I'm saving the surprise for next week. So we're going to finish Timothy today and next week. And we're back to this whole thing where we're talking about these. Remember when we were near the last half of Timothy, I talked about the fact that Paul was sort of doing like an assertiveness training for Timothy. He says, don't let anyone look down on your age. You need to confront these people. There's stuff going on in the church. Get out there and do this, Timothy. So this is my vision of Timothy, the kind of guy going, oh, my head hurts. But, the question is why are we looking at this, except for the fact it's in 1 Timothy? I mean, does this really have any helpfulness to us? Because unlike Timothy, we're not trying to coordinate a group of people in the church. So how does this apply to us? Well, it applies to us in a couple ways. And probably the most principle of it is stuff that goes on in a church is not the sole responsibility of a Timothy or a Jim or a pastor. It's actually a mutual responsibility of us all in terms of confronting issues that we know are self-destructive in each other's lives. So it's his advice to Timothy is advice to us. We're not meant to get in each other's business per se, but if one of us, myself included, goes off some rabbit trail into self-destructive behavior, it's actually on all of us in a loving way to say, you might want to rethink doing that. So this is where we're coming at today. So really, it's not just Timothy's problem, right? These awkward situations and confrontation. It's actually part and parcel of all of our problems in terms of loving one another in the body of Christ. There can be difficult confrontations that we just need to do. And it's wrong for us to say, well, that's not my job, it's the professional's job to do that. It's actually all of our jobs to do that. So that's what love is all about. So that's what we're doing, awkward situations. And I talked about these awkward situations. I call them for short auxits. Sounded kind of military, So we're on auxit number 8. Auxit number 8. And we're going to look at this last one. It's actually the last of the awkward situations that Paul tells Timothy to confront about. Now let me run over the 7 that came before this, just so you're trying to remember what's going on. Here's poor Timothy, the young guy, the awkward situations that he needs to confront. Number 1 was about widows. Remember the widows who were taking advantage of the system and being fed when they really weren't not really widows? He said those who were actually widows, yes, but then there's some who are not really actually widows. How can you not actually be a widow? Do you remember? If you have kids that'll support you, then you're not actually a widow. Your husband may be gone, but in terms of being cared for, you got kids. So he's talking about confronting the ones who actually have resources in their families. Number 2, we talked about donors to the church, and not donors to the church, but donors to support Timothy full time. And so there was evidently a lot of conflict about that. He said, look, don't muzzle the ox while he's treading out your grain, which what in the world does that mean? That means when the ox is actually there producing for you and he's producing food, you got to let the ox eat some of that food. It's just right because they're working. So it's an old aphorism for that. So we talked about donors to help support Timothy to be full-time in what he's doing. Then a real awkward situation, sinful leaders. And you can read more about that. It makes you wince looking at it. Also, not laying on hands too quickly. That's a public way of identifying with somebody. He says you can get in trouble if you publicly identify with someone who actually has a lot of conflict and sin in their lives. You don't want to too quickly identify publicly by laying on hands. It's really a public identifying thing. Number 5, alcohol. He told Timothy, go ahead and take some alcohol. And evidently Timothy had succumbed to the pressures from some of the like monastic ascetic types who says, no, never touch alcohol, not going to touch my lips. And Paul's saying, no, take some alcohol. It's actually good digestively. And actually that was a standard procedure. So the fact that he wasn't means that he'd succumbed to some pressures from some ascetics. Number 6, we talked about slaves and masters. Interestingly enough, again, to recap on slaves and masters, he doesn't rail against masters telling them slavery is wrong, free your slaves. He does not do that. And it's an interesting, it would be the time he would do that. He's not actually promoting slavery, but he's saying, here's the institution that exists. Masters do the right things lovingly. Slaves do the right things. So that's what he's talking about when he gets to there. And then last time, the 7, these false teachers, these people who are in this whole deal trying to teach things that are way off the track. So Timothy, even though you're younger, you need to confront these people and say, wait a second, you're teaching goofy stuff. And that can be one of the hardest confrontations. But at the end of the false teachers, right in that section right there, he's had a fascinating phrase at the end, and I'll bring up the slide when we finished it. Here's these false teachers, and he says they're into this because they imagine that godliness is a means of gain. And it's his way of saying, why are these guys false teaching? Is it because fame? No, it's because of gain. They actually are looking at it as a way to have a career so people will support them full time and actually make money at it. So that's why they're into this. So when he talks about that, in the context of the passage, that makes him think of something that leads him to this last awkward situation. And this is what he says, verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. So he says before, godliness, looks like a means of gain. He says, but now that I think about it, godliness with contentment is great gain. So this brings him to his last awkward situation. What's he talking about? Well, let's figure it out. So this is how he segues into it. Godliness, which godliness, by the way, is just living a lifestyle of following Jesus and all that comes with that. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And he goes on, for we brought nothing into the world and we cannot take anything out of it. If you've ever heard that before in relation to someone's death, this is where it came from. It's very famous, I can't take it with you. Here you go. We brought nothing into the world. We can't take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, well, with these we will be content. Well, I'm not getting the awkwardness of this situation yet. I mean, that makes sense, Be content if you're fed and you're clothed and you've got a roof over your head. That's good. I don't see the conflict. I don't see the awkward situation right here. So we'll go on and see if we can figure it out in the next couple of verses. But this makes sense. This is real. Contentment is a good thing. Everyone says that. What is the awkward situation? Well, let's move on to the next verse. Verse 9. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation. So the awkward situation is confronting rich folks. So now we're getting someplace. So now he's got to confront rich folks, it looks like, because they fall into temptation. And what does richness fall into? Well, it's actually a snare. A snare is one of those ropes on the ground that's tied to a springy tree, and you step into it, and it cinches up on your leg, and it pulls you into the air. That's a snare. So it looks like it's a good place to step, but in the end, it turns you upside down. So, no, riches can be a snare. They're like a trap. And it's a snare into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. So riches are bad. Wait a second. But it can be bad. It can be a snare. Riches it can be difficult. So what exactly is he getting at? I mean, what's the awkward situation? Is Paul asking him to confront rich people? And to go to them and say, it's not right that you own a lot more things than the people over there do. I think you need to take half of what you've got and distribute it. He's not saying that. So the issue isn't rich people, but we do know that there's a snare here, so we have to be careful. Yeah. So okay, let's wait one more verse and then we'll see what it is. For money is a root of all kinds of evil.
Depends on how you use it.
That's my heresy warning. I deliberately misquoted that for you. That's my heresy warning, like, darn, it caught me again. That's not what that verse says next. The next verse says this. For the love of money. It's misquoted all the time. And this phrase, too, that's what you'll hear in secular culture. They'll say, money is the root of all evil. No, it's the love of money that's the root of evil. So wait. So maybe the awkward situation isn't just riches alone. It's how we love them and pursue them. Well, yeah, okay, wait. So take that off. The next verses might help us out. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It's through this craving, that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Okay, so maybe the awkward situation Timothy has to confront really isn't just riches. It's not about equality of income or equality of ownership of things. It's about our heart's attitude toward riches. It's a craving for riches. It's the love of riches. And in fact, he clued us in at the very beginning, because here we have, it's through this craving. So that's something you think about and you crave after, just like some of us deal with chocolate that way. Okay, money, the love of money. And then if you go backwards in the verses, he said in verse 9, but those who desire to be rich, right? So we caught that. So craving, love of, desire. It seems like it's on your mind all the time. This is what you're pursuing. This is, in a sense, your God. And even the very beginning, he said, godliness with contentment is great gain. And so what's contentment? Contentment is saying I have enough. But when you say, I don't have enough, I'm going to crave more. Okay, so this is the problem. This is the problem. When you tie all these together, the issue is not rich folks at all. It's instead what I call the malcontents. And that's actually a very good word, malcontent, which means that you just are not content with what you have. And if you think about it, it doesn't matter how much you absolutely own. It will not cure you from being malcontent. You can double how much you own and double how much you earn, and you will probably still be malcontent. You can triple or quadruple. You can win the lottery, and you can still be malcontent. You can still be addicted to a craving for more, regardless of how much you have. So this is a syndrome that affects not only the poorest, who you would think would constantly be craving for riches all the time to solve their problems, but this is something that travels with you the more income you gain in life. Even the most successful people in life still have this syndrome. It's a problem. So it's an issue of the heart, and the issue of the heart is putting its hopes and its desires and its cravings on riches and more riches and more riches. I mean, we already know this. For people who seem to have maybe twice the amount of money that you have, and you compare their lifestyles, okay, they're living bigger, but they always seem to buy themselves into debt. And then they say, well, if I just had more money, I could solve that. So they get twice as much money, and they pursue more money, and then sure enough, they pay some stuff off, but then they go into even deeper debt. I mean, it seems like it never seems to stop. So there is no contentment in that sense. And by the way, before we go on, I don't want to forget this. The entire advertising industry is built on you not being content.
Yep.
The entire industry. And many times the appeals aren't just, you would like this. I'll show it to you in detail, and look, isn't this bright and shiny? Isn't this nice? Wouldn't this make your life? But then they resort to something I really hate. It's a very underhanded way. They don't just say, wouldn't you like this? They say, you deserve this. You're right. I do deserve this. Even if I can't afford this, I deserve it. So they're out there to sow discontent on purpose, because that's how you sell products. You don't sell things like oatmeal through these kinds of appeals, because they're just things you need. But you do sell cars, and you do sell cruises, and you do sell all these things. You deserve this. Okay, so just to warn you, that's what they're doing. So malcontents in the body, and this really is a very difficult thing to confront for Timothy. People who seem to be okay, their needs are met, but they're still discontent with what they have, and they put too much trust into it. So that's the first part. Actually, he splits this section of the awkward situations into two halves. And I'm going to jump ahead a handful of verses and go to the last half of the chapter, because this thing recurs in a slightly different way. So the first thing is malcontents. And by the way, before I switch, because it's just slightly different, but it's still related to money. Malcontents, when I counsel people and we talk about life and things like that, usually the issue is discontentment in maybe 60 or 70% of people I talk to. It's basically, my expectation in life is this, and it's not happening. So I am discontent where I am. And what I normally have to do is switch my gears somewhat and go back to, but what do you have that you're not being thankful for? What do you already have that you enjoy that this is really great? For instance, I was telling someone last night, one of my most thankful moments in my entire week is when I step into a hot shower. You might think, oh, that's kind of odd, Jim. Well, no, but wait. If you think about it, on a worldwide perspective, people who have hot showers in the morning are in a very small minority of the world. And it becomes apparent to me when we go camping. And I think, oh man, would I like a warm shower? Oh, yeah. And years ago, we finally bought a trailer that's got a shower in it and a water heater. So when you're out camping and you actually step into a warm shower when you're out in the middle of the woods, it's like, wow, this is very unnatural but wonderful. So every time I take a shower and I get under a warm shower, it causes me to pray. Isn't that weird? And I say, God, I never want to take you for granted. This is a glorious, wonderful thing. It's just and suddenly I'm singing in the rain, and it's just a wonderful thing. Now you and I mean, we're all surrounded with a host of things that seem ordinary and expected that are really unnatural blessings from God. And until you stop and number them and realize these come from the hand of God, you just take them for granted and you expect, well, I'm a human being and all human beings have this and we deserve this. Oh, I'm back to you deserve this. And that's totally wrong. In fact, in the present economy of what the universe is like and fallen mankind is like, the natural setting we ought to be should be death and destruction and chaos and despair, because we live in a fallen world that's populated by billions of people who live for themselves in a selfish way. Man after man, dog eat dog, the whole thing. I mean, it should be horrible all the time. Really, it should. But when you have these great blessings, it's like God is doing incredible things for us. So don't ever take them for granted. I know it's kind of it's a standard Thanksgiving message. You need to be thankful for it. Well, it's more than that. We are the recipients of really overflowing, loving, good things from God. And when they're there, you need to say, this is great. And when they're not there, on contrast, you need to say, well, that was great while God gave it to me. And for some reason, God's decided not to give it to me now. I'm okay because I still have 1,000 things he's given me that I love. So contentment it's a real cure to dissatisfaction and to how do I go, complaining all the time about what I don't have. And I'll give you just one personal example for me as well. Since I am professionally, a church guy, I mean, I'm paid. You guys pay me to do this. From time to time, I get newsletters in from this journal, a Christian journal that talks about church finances and church taxes and really boring kind of stuff. But one edition they put out every year I struggle with, and I cannot even look at it. I see that's the topic of the journal. I have to throw it away. And what it is the yearly review of pastoral compensations. Oh. And I see that on the cover, and I have to throw it away. Because instantly, even though my needs are perfectly met, you all are so gracious, perfectly met, I'm in need of nothing. I mean, it's adequate and it's just fine, and I should be content. When I get that journal article, I'm instantly discontent. Now, you probably have something just like that, really. So it's the fact that there's more available is what makes you discontent. But what Paul's saying, look, if you've got clothing, if you're fed, if you've got a roof over your head, hey, that's more than most people. You need to say, God, this is okay. This is enough. I'm content with this. And I'm going to turn off the advertisements and say, you deserve. I'm content with this. And as he started this out, a godliness with contentment is great gain. And that gain is the word to make money. So contentment in itself is the means through which you'll find that you're actually richer than you thought you were. So that's all he's getting at. And I have to constantly remind people, kind of like Timothy does from this section, that you need to be content with what God gives you. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of us that have very little. And when you tell someone who has very little, who struggles to get by from week to week, it's hard to say, you just need to be content. Well, and it's because it sounds trite, it sounds unfeeling, but in a sense it's true, even for those who don't have much. Most of the discontentment comes from seeing what other people have that I don't. So again, it's a comparative kind of thing. And again, even in that case, you can look to dozens of things, maybe more, that God has blessed you with, even when you have nothing. I'll give you one last example because I love doing this book plug. The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. Woo! Has everyone read that yet? Yeah. Okay. Well, when Corrie and her sister Betsy are in a German concentration camp, they're not Jewish, but they happen to harbor Jews during World War II, so they got put in concentration camps. And it's interesting because Corrie has this wonderful dialogue that goes on between herself and her sister Betsy while they're in Birkenbauer in another concentration camp. And it seems like Betsy, the older sister, can be in the worst situations and say, oh, Corrie, we have so much. And then Corrie writes in the book, I looked at my sister and said, she's crazy. Well, she didn't say that actually, but that's in the conversation. That conversation comes over and over and over and over again, and you can think, what have I got to be thankful for, to be content with in a concentration camp? I mean, really. We have lost so much compared to what we had. There's the comparison thing that gets you away again. Are you able to be content when you're in that low a situation? And that's why I recommend the book, because yes, you read how Betsy chides Corey, and Corey feels like, who is this woman? How can she be not happy necessarily, but be content in this kind of a place? So again, contentment is more contaminated by comparison with what you had or what other people had. But if it's just you by yourself, you can be content in whatever God's given you. And that contentment will calm you down and stop you being really kind of cranked up about what you don't have. Okay? So it's a very big deal. It's a very big deal. And we'll look at a little more application at the end here. So he's going to switch gears, jump a couple of verses, and these are not the malcontents. These are the FD and H'ers. I'll give you 10 minutes to figure out what that is. So here, it's a slight switch, has to do with money. As for the rich of this present age, so he's talking about the rich. Is he going to come down on the rich? As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty. Charge is confront. So confront them and tell them to stop being haughty. You know what haughty is, right? I can physically demonstrate haughtiness. It's actually to elevate yourself. Right? So when rich people say, you don't have much, but I'm self-made and I have millions. That's haughtiness. So it's actually elevating yourself above people who don't have. He says, confront them and tell them not to be uppity. That's exactly what that word means. Nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches. Setting your hope is back to the contentment thing you talked about before. Remember, they crave after. You know. So even though they have riches, they have riches. They're rich. He says, don't set your hope on those things. Why does he say not set your hope on them? What's the problem with riches?
They can leave.
They're uncertain. And it makes me think instantly of Jesus' parable about the guy, the farmer, who took in double his produce and decided he's going to build a bigger barn so he could store it. And so he puts all the stuff. I mean, he's literally rich. He's kind of struck it rich in the stock market from a farming perspective. And he puts it all in the barn. And then suddenly he dies and he can't take it with him. So that's the idea. So he said, so one of the problems of riches, we talked about discontentment, but here we're talking about putting your trust in it. But the problem is that riches lie to you. They tend to tell you you're more secure when you have riches. Now, if you went through the recession in 2008, I met a good friend of mine from New York a year or two after that, and I asked him, I said, so, and I think he just retired. So he'd had a lot of money in investments and stuff for his retirement account. And I asked him, I said, so how did 2008 go for you? And he said, I lost half of my assets. Half of my assets. And they probably won't come back. And he says, that's money that I've been putting aside my entire career saving for retirement. And in a blink of an eye, half of them were gone. And they didn't come back. So when Timothy is being told by Paul that riches are uncertain, we know that. I mean, we really do know that. We understand this probably more volatilely in the modern age than they did back then. But now what... But see, here's the deception. What do riches say in your face? They say, store me up, you'll be safe. So it's exactly the opposite. So Paul says, listen, the rich who have money, tell them not to put their hope in it because they'll be deceived, because basically riches don't stick around very long. They're uncertain. And Jesus talked about them when using the metaphor of moth and rust. They just go away. They decay. They're gone. So don't set your hopes on that. But set your hopes on God. Yeah. Set your hopes on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. So it's an interesting contrast. Riches, gold bars. Hey, if I have a bar of gold, I'll be set for life. Not really, actually. But what is predictable, what is not uncertain, what is indeed certain in terms of resources for life, set your hope on God. It's an active dependence on God rather than an active dependence on the gold bars in my closet. See? So it's a different kind of thing. Set your hopes not on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. That last phrase is it's a mind blower. Richly, which means he's using a treasure word. It's basically You have money in the bank. He richly, it means you have more than you need and you'll have more in the future. And richly, you're way over the top. Who richly provides us with most things we need. No, with everything that we'll enjoy. Now that's just way over the top what God does when you put your trust in him. We have needs, food, housing, clothing, all that kind of stuff. But what Paul is saying here is that riches themselves are uncertain, but God's not uncertain. Put your trust in him. And not only will he provide your needs, he'll go beyond your needs, is what that last line is. He'll go actually to provide for you richly over the top for everything to enjoy. To enjoy. Well, that is just not common sense in the secular world. The secular world says, store up the gold bars in your closet, and then you'll have everything you need for what you want to enjoy. Paul's saying, yeah, that's uncertain. Can't do that. But God's certain. You can put your faith in him. He'll provide for you. So that's just so radically different. Have you figured out F, D, and H yet? So the rich people, they have lots of money. Fat, dumb, and happy. He's confronting the fat, dumb, and happy. People who have plenty. And think that because they have plenty, they have security, and they're ready to go. Fat, I mean literally in their culture, fat people were rich people. Literally. Fat people got fat usually by eating fat. That's why when you look in the Old Testament, when you look at dietary issues in the Old Testament, you know, the luxurious part of a diet is the fat part. So fat, dumb in the terms of they don't know that their riches are insecure. But happy, feel like everything's just fine. So he has to confront the people. Now remember, the first people who had to confront were the malcontents, who regardless of how much they had, they were still craving after more. Here, it's still a money group of people, but it's slightly different, you see. It's people who already have and tend to put their trust in that and tend to think that they really don't need God. Fat, dumb, and happy. But in essence, they're in great danger because money is not that secure. Put your trust, put your hope in God. And then he says the result of this is thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future. So he's actually using money terms right now. That's a bank term in the beginning. He's talking about storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future. So if they put their trust in God, it's as though they're actually putting money in a bank. And that's the terms he's using right now. You can either put your trust in the gold bars in your closet, or you can put your trust in God. And in putting your trust in God, it's as though you're storing up treasure. Wow. So it's a way of saying there are infinite riches for your needs and for your enjoyment in God if you just put your faith and trust in God. Just put your hope in him. That's where the certainty is. It's a good foundation for the future so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. And here he's outlining another very interesting thing, is that when you put your trust in money, you think you're actually putting an investment and a trust in what life is going to be all about. Like, let me win the lottery just once and I'll really live. Yeah, I'll tell you what real life is like, because up till now, I haven't been able to live real life because I haven't had enough money to do it. But give me $1 million and I'm going to live life. But unfortunately, a high percentage of the people who win the lottery become more miserable at the end of it. Now, how is that possible? Because they're fat, dumb, and happy. Because when they visualize what this resource can do to bring life, they visualize what life looks like, and they're dumb about what life really is. And so they invested in that, and they find that in the end, I've wasted all my money, and that stuff didn't bring me life at all. And that is the deception of modern day life. That is the deception of advertising, by the way. This will make life wonderful. This will bring real life to you. Then take my money. I want true life. And then they take your money and you get the thing and you go, it's okay. What I need is more money so I can buy that instead, because that will bring me true life. Oh, and then you crave money, you work really hard, you get the money, whatever, you rob a bank, I don't know what you do, and then you go for that thing and you buy the thing, ooh, That didn't do it. I know I need more money so I can go after that. And you spend an entire life pursuing the things that are not truly life. He's saying really clearly, if you want truly life, put your hope in God, who will see to it that he provides riches for everything to enjoy. I mean, really? Are you trying to say to me that if I have no money at all, I can be happier trusting in God? Yes. Yeah. 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 Money is a deception in that sense. And money is also, I call money ego fuel. I call it ego fuel because what money is a very neutral thing. It's just a resource. But it's ego fuel because if you say, I want to make the world the way I want to make it, that's ego talking. I want to have things the way I want to be maximally happy according to my definition. What I need is fuel for those dreams. What's that fuel? The lottery. It's money. It's ego fuel. Unfortunately, your ego is probably your worst enemy. So there is an issue here when it comes to riches that's actually extraordinarily dangerous. It's at the core of why Jesus said, man, it is really tough for a rich person to get into heaven. Really tough. Tougher than, a camel through the eye of a needle. So it's really, really tough. But why is it so tough for rich people to get into heaven? Is because God waits when you come up to the pearly gates. He says, so what's your net worth, buddy? 2.3 million. Well, you're not coming to heaven then. I'm sorry. This is for people whose net worth is less than $5,000. No, that's not what we're talking about. It's because those who have riches are very easily tempted to make that their idol and their God. That's why it's very hard for rich people. So it turns out that riches are an inherent danger to your soul. Now, some people can own a lot of riches and deal with them well from a godly perspective. They don't crave after them. They don't try and increase them. They can deal with them well, and they use it not so much as ego fuel as so much as service fuel to give to other people. And so it's a different kind of thing. In the end, the resource itself is not the danger. The heart's the danger. The resource ends up just amplifying what's in your heart. And that's the problem. So it can be an ego fuel is what it is. So he's saying here, the issue is not just providing for life, but truly life if you wait on God and you store up treasures for the foundation for the future. This also points out one last thing, and then I'll move on. What's interesting is that God seems to know what I need for life better than I do. Yeah. And I'm not saying this theoretically. I'm saying this pragmatically as I look backward in life. There are things that I went through that he allowed me to have or to not have deliberately, that in the end I look at it and I weigh them and say, you know what, it's probably better that I didn't win the lottery that day. Or something, that's a silly example, but this was all good for me. And when I look at that history, I also realize that from the front end of these events happening that came into my life, I was not smart enough to recognize them as being good or bad for me. But in the end, by God's grace, he's the one that said, no, Jim, you put your trust in me and your hope in me. I'm going to make sure that you end up in truly life, not in stupid life, not in fat, dumb, and happy life. And so he restricted some things that at the time I whined about. It's not fair. I should have, right? Things you whined about that you didn't have. And then there's things that you gained that you didn't have the wisdom to even pursue on the front end. And there's this legacy of things avoided and things participated in that came from the hand of God, that God says, this is what you need, Jim. So there is a real sense why money as an ego fuel is danger. Again, because your ego doesn't really tell you what's best for you. Sometimes it does. When I'm hungry, I'll do that. But that's not ego. Ego is a desire for where you're going toward. So you need to put your hope in God. And if you put your hope in God and some things come and other things don't, you need to, like Paul does in another letter, say, well, if I don't have it, God thinks I don't need it. And what I do have, I'll redouble and go back to God and say, God, thanks for this. This warm shower is the best thing ever. I think I'll take an extra minute and just let it be. Oh, yes. And be thankful. And God says, and Paul tells us when he talks about food, he says that when you move into a thankful mood about the things you enjoy, like, God, thank you, this came from you, he says you sanctify it. He says you make it holy. You make that thing as a holy kind of present from God, and you make it pure and holy, and it's something that you ascribe to God's gift to you rather than something you deserve, because we all deserve it. It's a radically different thing. Radically different. Truly life. So setting your hopes on God is really the whole thing he's talking about. And Timothy's going to have to deal with the fat, dumb, and happy types who have enough money already to be a danger to themselves. He also has to deal with people who, regardless of how much money they have, they're malcontent. They're discontent with what they have or what they don't have. Both syndromes are kind of the riches syndromes or money syndromes. So that's what he hits on here. But the cure, set your hope on God, and then he'll bring you into truly life. Let me just show you a couple of other passages before we close, because this is a topic, especially with Jesus, that comes up all the time. You realize how much Jesus talked about this topic? And it's only because riches are a potential minefield of danger to us. I mean, really, really are. In my experience, it's a minority of people who can handle riches and handle them wisely. Some of us should not be trusted with money. Because you end up fueling the silliest desires, and you end up walking away from God. In fact, I didn't put this passage up there, but one of my favorite passages, it's in Proverbs. If you don't know Proverbs, that's a great thing. But the writer of Proverbs, he prays in one place, and he prays to God and says, there's two things I ask of you, God. Number one, and don't deny them to me before I die. So I ask you for two things, just two things. Number one, remove from me falsehood and lying. I hate lying. Number two, give me neither poverty nor riches. It's an economic thing. Neither poverty nor riches, neither too little or too much. And then he expands that a little bit, and he says, feed me with the food that's needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of God. Just give me what I need. That's probably the best optimal thing on the riches scale. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Karen. It's in Proverbs 30. Proverbs 30. Two things I ask of you, deny them not to me before I die. Number one, remove from me falsehood and lying. Number two, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that's needful, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of God. So again, it's an eloquent plea to God for God, meet my needs, and I won't go in the cravings tour for money. Okay? If I have too much, I'll forget you. If I have too little, I'll do unspeakably bad things. So that's exactly what he's talking about here. This is not a true idea that's just in the New Testament. Matthew 6:24, Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, no one can serve two masters, for either he'll hate the one, love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. So you cannot serve God and money. So really, the heart of the issue, remember I said with riches are neutral. It's the heart issue that's the problem. What is it fueling in your heart? Is it fueling ego, or is it fueling the ability to serve other people and give? It is radically two different things. If you listen to Dave Ramsey on the radio, the financial advisor, when he talks about what it takes to get out of debt and how to live life financially, the goal at the end for him, not really so much the goal, but the great benefit at the end of this process, in a mature process, is it gets you to the point that you have enough money that you can actually give it away. That's his goal. Not just accumulate it, but to have enough to meet your needs and meet needs of your family and all of your responsibilities. And then you have this wonderful life where you can give it away. There's nothing as truly life as giving away. But as long as we're kind of stuck in debt, we can't give away because we're stuck. So here's what Jesus is saying. Our hearts tend to serve one or the other. If you have plenty of money, and this is what Paul's telling Timothy, you've got plenty of money, you're tempted to put your trust in it, but it's not secure. Okay? And you're also tempted to not look to God for what you need because you already have what you need. That's what's hard about rich people getting into heaven. Why do I need God? I've got plenty. My barn is full. I've got stacks of gold bricks in my closet. Who needs God? And you die. So anyway, that's what he's saying right there. And you can't serve them both. They actually, the terms he's using here is terms that are used of idols. And by the way, an idol isn't just an Old Testament idea. An idol is anything that you invest your interest and your resources in the hopes that it'll give back to you life. It's anything that has a higher priority to bring life to you than God himself. And unfortunately, that encompasses a lot of things that we dilly-dally in. Oh, I do this because, if I do this well, it'll make me happy. It'll bring me truly life. Now, hold on there. So that's what we're talking about. That's idolatry. And that's what he's saying here. You can turn money into an idol. That's Jesus himself warning us about that. In another place, James 4. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? And the passions he's talking about include the passions and the craving for money and for other things. So you see, remember I said the problem with contentment is it's busted up when you go into comparison mode. Either comparison with your past or future, or your comparison with what advertisements say, or your comparisons with what other people have. Contentment is usually self-contained in that sense. So he's saying, why is it you guys are fighting with each other? Because your passions about what you want, those cravings for a lifestyle change, have you hitting heads and going on. That's what's going on. So you have to be careful. It's your passions that are at war within you. He goes on and says, you desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. And he's showing this. You see, who's in charge of the first half of that verse? You are. You are. You don't have, so you murder and you fight, and you take from one another. That, by the way, is the feudal idea for ancient civilization up until the modern day. Oh, it extends now, which is, if you don't have enough, if you're not rich enough, if your standard of living is too poor, hey, go invade another country and take their stuff. I mean, that's how mankind has worked forever and ever, and we still do that amongst one another. They've got more than I have. That's not right. They have more than I have. I'm justified to break into their house and take their stuff because they're not better than me. So they don't deserve to have that more than I do. I'm going to equalize assets. So I'm justified because they have too much. So you steal and you take, right? So, and it comes with murder as well. In its extreme cases, someone has more than you do, so you murder them and you take all their stuff. In the ancient world, you could take a guy's wife, technically, if she wasn't married anymore. And the only way to have that happen is if you murdered a husband. That's at the heart in Genesis, where you see Abram and Sarah, and they're kind of wandering around in the desert and stuff like that. And Abraham says to Sarah, listen, if someone comes up nearby, since you are so gorgeous, tell them I'm your brother, not your husband. Well, why? Well, because if they want you, and you just have them your brother, they won't kill me because they don't have to dissolve the marriage. So say I'm your brother. So Abraham does this twice. Once with Pharaoh and one with another guy in the desert. And both times God protects Sarah. But this is the idea. If you want another man's wife, kill the man, and it's legal. Come on. So this is what we're getting at. It's all coveting. Psalm 37, a few verses in Psalm 37. Trust in the Lord. This is the setting your hope on God. Trust in the Lord and do good. That means don't go stealing and murdering to get your stuff. Trust in the Lord, do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Well, dwell in the land is a metaphor for living in the stuff that God has already given you and being thankful for it. Okay? So dwell in the land God has given you and befriend faithfulness. What does that mean? We're talking actually about the faithfulness of God, his faithfulness to meet your needs. He's trustable if you put your hope in him. Is he faithful to meet my needs? Yeah, he is. And again, back in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, don't seek after that stuff. Seek after his kingdom and his righteousness, and all that other stuff will come. God is faithful. You can put your hopes in him and provide for you. So he says here in Psalm 37, live in the land. Well, what land has God given you to live in? It's probably full of blessing. It's probably full of nice, great things that you had very little control either in picking or in financing or pursuing. I mean, you enjoy just a lot. Live in the land. Do good. Don't go robbing people. And in the end, what you need to do is befriend faithfulness. That is, every day when your heart is tempted to crave what other people have, say, no, I'm not befriending that craving, that discontentment. I'm going to befriend the faithfulness of God. He can give to me. That's what he's talking about. And then he goes on and says something even more radical in Psalm 37. In verse 4, he goes on and says, this is crazy. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. What? If you know John Piper's ministry, he's a pastor in the Midwest. This is kind of his heart verse. If he was prone to it, he would have it tattooed on his arm. Delight yourself in the Lord to give you the desires of your heart. Well, what does that all mean? Well, if you delight yourself in the Lord, that's where your cravings are. Your cravings are for God. Delight yourself in God. If you delight yourself in God, he will give you the desires of your heart. What does that mean? He'll give me a win in the lottery? That's a desire of my heart.
Not if you're delighting in God.
Not if you're delighting in God, because suddenly you're delighting in money instead.
Yeah.
Or as the King James says, lucre. Lucre. Filthy lucre. Yeah. So yeah, delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you desires. So if you set your hope in God and set your delights in who God is, He will respond by just overflowing you with that delight that you place in Him. He will fill that relationship. It doesn't say that out of the riches of heaven He'll give you everything you want. He says He'll give you all of who He is. It's radically different. And that's why Betsy, when she was in Birkenbauer concentration camp, could say, well, we have very little here circumstantially, but we still have God, and He's a great blessing to us. And again, you read that book, and it's easy for you to identify with Corey because you're standing a couple steps back from Betsy and say, Betsy, how in the world do you get in this place where you can look at your circumstances that are so dire, and you can say, yeah, but we have God, and He's just a great blessing to us. Does that really work? It does. It really does. It really does. He'll give you the desires of your heart. And then the last verse, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. And He will act. These are just great verses. So again, you really do have a choice when it comes to riches. You can crave them and pursue them. You can put your unfortunate trust in them. You can do all that stuff. Or you can set your hopes in God. You can put your delight and trust in Him, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. And when you trust Him, He will act. He will. He will act. He will act. There was several occasions in my life where financially I did things for the Lord that I said, gosh, God, I think this is going to put the income for my family in danger. I'm not sure this is going to work. All of my analytical, accounting, numbers-oriented brain is saying, ding, 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 this is not going to work. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I just had to turn in the midst of all that clutter in my mind and say, well, God is faithful. He has been faithful in the past. He is faithful in the present and in the future. So what I'm not doing is saying all the warning lights are going off, so I won't do this. But I've said, Lord, I'm putting myself in your hands. I trust in you, and you will act. And He did. And He did. Now, that's not an excuse to be imprudent. You need to plan. You need to understand this. But one of the great things of being a planner type of looking at this and understanding the potential danger you're on the edge of is when you finally see God act, you get a grasp of the magnitude of what He's done for you. Because you understand where it could have gone. He will act. So I love the psalmist when he writes this. Commit your way to the Lord. That's setting your hope on God. Trust in Him. That is looking to Him as the resource for all the stuff. And He will act. Oh, we're done. So just one last comment before we sing this song. This is a particular disease in our culture right now. Yes. Because we are in one of the richest times in history, in a place that's one of the richest places on earth. I mean, we enjoy a tremendous amount of money. We live like kings. Only kings used to live like this a couple centuries back. I mean, we live like kings. And we presume that this is the normal life, that this is how things normally are. We take them for granted in that particular sense. But you have to understand that doesn't, because we're covered, our needs are covered so well, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're immune from craving for more. And again, advertisers know this, and they know that our hearts are all about that. You really need to be on guard, because you don't want to have me pull a Timothy on you someday and say, you're trusting in riches and it's going to betray you someday. You really don't want to do that. And so this is the problem. We are afflicted this way. So there's the 8A and the 8B part of this on the oxes. The 8A part is people who are not content. Well, we are very much not content even though we're rich. And the part B people who put their trust in the money that they already have, well, that's us too. So we're in both camps. So just beware. When I see a motorcycle ad, I go through tremendous spiritual trauma. And I look at that and go, I can feel myself sailing through the air. I mean, all those desires start to okay, maybe it's something else for you, but that's my weakness. And so when I see this stuff, I have to constantly say to God, God, I already have a motorcycle. It's a wonderful thing, and I enjoy using it. I used it last night. It was, and in fact, I went to someone's house for dinner. And I came back from dinner in the dark, and riding a motorcycle in the dark it's not terrifying. It's exhilarating. It feels like you're flying because you're just going through darkness. And there's wind, and you feel like you're kind of gliding. I mean, I know I'm really making too big a deal of this, but while I was doing this last night, and I'm shooting through the dark around 10 o'clock, and feeling the really nice air right now in the spring, I'm feeling this go by, I just said, God, I condemn those thoughts for getting that machine instead. You've given me a wonderful machine, and I'm enjoying this so much, and I don't deserve this. I didn't even pursue this before I get into this. You sort of dropped it in my lap. I said, well, okay, we'll see how this goes. And here I am enjoying this, God. This is from your hand. And I'm right here enjoying this and saying, God, you bless me with so much. I don't need this. I've got another car. But this is a delight that comes from you. And in that thankfulness, I sanctified my motorcycle. Same thing happens when you have a wonderful meal. Have a wonderful meal. You could have just eaten beans for dinner, and many of us do, a lot. But when you have that marvelous meal, and you put that in your mouth, you go, oh, God, this is remarkable. And if you're with people that you love, this is doubly remarkable. I am so enjoying this, and God, you've gone above and beyond the call. I know I have needs, and I know you're faithful to meet my needs, but this is beyond that. I mean, it's really beyond that. And so in that thankfulness, as you're eating that barbecued shrimp or that prime rib or chocolate, you need to train your senses that instead of craving more, to just go into deep thankfulness. God, you do this, and this is beyond everything. You're going way beyond what I need. In fact, when you look at food itself, for instance, God could have he could have designed our bodies that we needed nutrients, and the only nutrients that worked was kind of like a gray soupy goo that looked like a bad day in the Soviet Union. A gray soupy goo, and that was the only thing that satisfied. Tomatoes aren't going to do it. Pork loin roasts aren't going to do it. Shrimp it's only the gray soupy goo, and you could be eating that day after day and say, well, I'm alive. That's what I call the manna experience. Well, I'm alive. But God decided that instead of just meeting your needs for calories with a gray soupy goo, he said, well, what do you think about this? You mean meeting my calorie needs can be fun and enjoyable? Yes. And we take that for granted. But he did that on purpose. He did that on purpose. So we can sit in the midst of that and go, this is from the hand of God. He not only meets our needs, but he goes far above and beyond. Now that's true in almost everything you experience. He could have met the minimal need, but in the minimal need, he also decides, I'm going to blow their minds today. Watch this. I'm going to create a spring day where the sun is out, where the flowers are blossoming, where it rained yesterday and today it's clear so that everything can be vibrant and new. And you wake up in the morning, you wake up and you walk outside and you smell the air and you go, oh, God, you are so good, because this could be a gray, goopy day.
Yeah.
And you could have just provided me enough oxygen to stay alive because that's my need, but you provided this. So I'm just saying, although we are tempted to go into the craving mode for what we don't have, don't miss the fact about what you're surrounded with that you do have. Because it's God's desire to glorify himself and to glorify his loving kindness to you by giving to you far above what you need and delighting you with everything you desire. Really. I'm not really. And it starts with contentment, being content with what you have. That's turning off the craving, being content with what you have. And then once you're content with what you have, sit down and look at what you have, because you're living like a king. And even if you happen to be in a concentration camp in Birkenbauer, and you lose all that, you can still wake up every day and find the graciousness of God in providing for you in ways that you never had seen before until the water in the lake went low enough you could see the other stuff he's done. So that's all I'm saying. That we live in a world that caters to your cravings for more. Don't Don't succumb. But when you do have good things come your way, turn them into thankfulness, and then you too can cruise down the street in the dark and go, God is great. Oh, yes. Now, that's just my experience. Yours is different. Don't worry about that.
All you need is a self-driven motorcycle.
A self-driven motorcycle.
You have your ribs in front of you and you're going down.
That would be cool. A composite delight machine.
Yeah.
Motorcycle with a server's tray that's got ribs on top of it.
Robotic butler built into the motorcycle.
Exactly. By the way, too, one of the things you take advantage of and don't thank God for is clean water. Again, you're in a minority worldwide with clean water. That you can actually turn on a tap and drink it. You don't do that in parts of Europe. So, again, I mean, it's you're blessed beyond measure. When the craving machine turns on in your head, turn it off with contentment and setting your hopes on God and being thankful for the riches you have. That's all it's about. And that's what Timothy had to tell to the malcontents and to the FD&Hers. Got them and happy. Okay. We need to quit. We need to sing the song. Because I chose this because this is really the key. When you get into contentment mode and thankfulness mode, you instantly say, Lord, I love you. You give to me so richly. You give to me so richly. I could crave many things, but God, today I'm going to crave you. I put my desires in you, and you'll meet the desires of my heart. Yes. Okay. Father in heaven, thank you again for this wonderful book, for Paul's advice that through your Spirit you gave to him and he passed on to Timothy. And Lord, we realize that we are as much the targets of these admonitions as anybody is. And Lord, forgive us when we go off on our cravings and put them in place of you and tend to believe that these things, once grabbed onto, may give us more life than you give us directly, because they don't. And they're often deceptions. And they're vaporous. They tend to go away overnight, it seems like. And Lord, save us from our cravings, especially for money, for this ego fuel that we think will be the salvation of our unhappiness, be the salvation of our gray living. But Lord, you're the one that comes into our lives in relationship with you, and you bring sweetness to every moment. You're the one who brings fruit to the trees of our life when we go through droughts and seasons of heat and freezing, because our roots as a tree go down next to the stream of the water of your life, and we find true life that seems to be regardless of our circumstances, because it seems to be that as we walk with you, we find that your presence and your nearness brings more truly life than the things that were around us to start with. But Lord, when you do bring good things around us, when they're there for a while, our hearts exult and we see them as gift-wrapped presents from a God who loves us so much that he's not content to just meet our needs, but to go far beyond our needs and bless us with tremendously good gifts. So Lord, turn our hearts back to you in the midst of those things. Prevent us from just taking them for granted. Prevent us from thinking that we're such hot stuff, that we're such good people, that we deserve these things. Because Lord, we know we deserve none of them. But you still give, and you give, and you give. And in that small metaphor of what you give, we start to understand that maybe God gives me himself, and that's better than all these things combined. So we thank you for these things now. In Jesus' name, amen.